What I've observed in Australia is that people are experiencing it and seeing it as a new opportunity to build something that's genuinely different, that genuinely has a long-term view, and there's a lot of hope that this will actually produce significant change. I think there's a real risk still that it won't necessarily produce some of the change that's expected. We'll talk about that in a minute, I guess, but I'm an optimist, and I've seen, I guess, firsthand, both within the agency and across the sector, many people working really hard with good intention and doing some very good work at times to create something that's going to be lasting and that we can be proud of as a country and proud of as individuals who've had a part to play in building it. What we're seeing is this incredible wealth of new voices at the table bringing perspectives to bear on how we can build this thing and make it work, which I think is fantastic, because if it had been left to just the disability players, then we'd be in grave danger of just rebuilding the same as what we had. I've seen and heard stories of people saying, look, the initial few months and engagement has often been problematic. However, I've also heard parents who've now, and family members who've been involved for a couple of years, saying it's a good thing, it's been a good thing, it will be a good thing. And I guess they're the kind of voices that give me hope that this will work. I've also had the privilege, I guess, of meeting quite a few of the key decision makers across the country, and that gives me great hope, because when I sit down and talk with them, I see people of integrity, I hear people of integrity, and people of great wisdom and knowledge in many cases. So I do hope, I guess, and expect that we will build something that is different and better to what we've had. The NDIS is now in its third year of a 3-year trial period, and from the middle of next year then they start the full scheme rollout and ramping up. So at the moment there's just under 20,000 participants in the scheme, and by the middle of 2020 there will be 460,000. On any scale, I think that's a mind-boggling prospect and a mind-boggling growth pattern. Now, admittedly, a lot of those people are already in state systems and it's a case of transferring them, but it is nonetheless a new system they're being transferred to, and they have to get their heads around it. For me, I kind of see lots and lots of challenges in that. I would love to see them add another couple of years before they get to full scheme rollout, so that they give themselves a bit more time to take people in slowly. I don't think that's going to happen. I could see challenges with simply having staff in the agency who know enough about what their roles are and how they can do plans for all these people. And we're going to be talking across the country, a couple of hundred plans being written every single day for a couple of years there. So that's a huge undertaking, and do they have the people who can do that? Will they be able to recruit them and keep them and motivate them? I don't know. One thing the NDIS has done very well, in my opinion, to date, is they have experimented and they have stayed incredibly open to hearing from people in a wide variety of positions and to adapting their practices and their processes in light of that. So I think that's fantastic. It's inevitable that as the system becomes more embedded and more structured, that kind of flexibility will start to diminish and that systems will be built. So I think one of the dangers or the risks for the NDIS is that some of that solidifying will happen too quickly. Some of it will embed things that perhaps aren't the wisest and best practices. So there's some of the risks that the NDIS certainly is facing. People are motivated, intrinsically motivated by the vision of the NDIS and what it could be. And one of the risks, I think, is that some people will burn out simply because the resources within the organisation aren't sufficient to do everything that needs to be done, but people are so committed to trying to do it that they're working long hours. So I think that's a risk, probably more at a personal worker level, and unfortunately not every worker has the capacity to just turn off and say, I've done enough, and it's not my problem if some things can't get done. I think another challenge that the organisation is going to face is how to deliver services, or how to make sure that people in the remote parts of Australia have access to the services they need. Similarly, with a lot of the people who live in the remote regions, then they are people with an Aboriginal heritage, and in the Aboriginal languages in Australia, there's not a concept or a word for disability. So how do you help people to get out of their disempowered disability position if they don't actually understand that? And some of the challenges of simply being an Aboriginal person in remote Australia are more disempowering than having a disability or not having a disability. I don't think that the organisation has done as well as it could to date in engaging people with intellectual disability and engaging people with non-English speaking backgrounds. So making sure that those voices get heard and I think amplified as we go to full scheme rollout will be really important. The voice of large traditional service providers, they're well organised, they've got a lot of resources compared to individuals, and they are an organised lobby group. So there is a danger that their voice could be heard too loudly and could shape the scheme for the benefits of them rather than for what people with disabilities will really get the benefit from. So I think that if we end up seeing congregated and segregated services proliferating, then we will have sadly missed an opportunity. I think that for me is one of the benchmarks, that if we start to see people moving out of group homes, start seeing them get real employment instead of sheltered workshop employment, and out of day programs that occupy them but not necessarily give them meaningful lives, then that will not be very, I think when we start seeing those sort of changes, then we will be in a position to say this has been worthwhile.